Hello there everybody! Today I wanted to go over how I design my OCs and how I plan on improving my designs in the future. Okay, so I have 3 characters I'm going to be working on, and we're going to start with Ryver, as he's a character that I want to bounce off of design-wise with the other 2 characters. And I'll explain what that means once I get to them. So the first thing I like to do is think about where the character is. Ryver is going to be in my main medieval fantasy type world. Based off of that, I know the general vibe, the tech behind the design, the kind of material. You know, I wouldn't put him in sweatpants and a hoodie. But beyond that, you're usually going to want to think a little bit deeper about where the OC is and what they will be doing. Which, thankfully, I did. Ryver is a Wendigo hunter in a deeply wooded area with a colder climate near the mountains. I even did a few concept sketches just to get an idea of what the forest is going to look like. Basically really dark and foggy and ominous. First thing I do is I start out with drawing some bases of what I want the face to look like. I like doing this just because I find the face the most interesting part, usually, of the design, or at least it's the most unchangeable part of the design. Because you could change their outfit pretty much any time, because obviously people change their outfits all the time. But the face stays more or less the same. I already have a pretty good idea, as I did some sketches in my sketchbook first, which I just like to do. Though I will say, I do have a problem with just going with my initial idea and not expanding on the design with new iterations. Which, personally, for my designs, I think that leads to weaker shape language. But that's something that I want to work on more, and I attempted with the next designs. Anyway, after I did the portraits, I went on to draw a base, or like a model for the body, that I can use to draw different outfit ideas without needing to redraw the body every time. And at this point, I had a pretty good idea of the direction I wanted to take the colors specifically. I wanted a strong blue theme, but with pops of other colors like green and red, which you might think is strange considering his environment, but honestly that's kind of the point. He's made to be easily spottable, and the brighter colors are almost a challenge, as he's a Wendigo hunter. He has very few things to be worried about. So I kind of see it more as like a lot of poisonous animals will have bright colors more as a warning instead of, hiding away. Now, granted, that's usually for poisonous prey animals, but I like it for Ryver's design. Especially since everything else is dark and gloomy, it'll be nice to have a pop of color in that area. Also, to kind of keep the look of being an experienced hunter, he also has a lot of scars and wounds. Most notably, you probably noticed that he only has his left arm, and he has an eye patch on his right eye. They are scars from his previous escapades. I want Ryver to look intimidating, but not necessarily villainous, as I plan for him to be an ally to the main character. Because of this, I want to lean into more square shapes, as they're usually seen as stronger. So the biggest thing that I think helps with that is the cape. It just kind of falls straight down from his shoulders, and so it makes a nice silhouette because capes are cool. Also, to continue with the intimidating look, Ryver is a species known as a Treeden, and they're all very tall. So he's going to be towering over a lot of characters, which generally will make your character look more intimidating. So for the design, I also wanted to use a lot of furs. One, because it's a colder climate, and Ryver, even though he's a Wendigo hunter, he also makes a living more so by selling furs of other animals like bears or deer or whatever else is in the woods out there. Your everyday creatures, at least for a fantasy world. But overall, I want Ryver to look intimidating, but not necessarily scary. And I want him to be believably peaceful and seemingly calm. And in general, I see him as being pretty well liked by the people, especially since he's doing them a pretty big service by keeping the Wendigo population down. Most people in those woods don't even go into the woods at all, so they're not even sure what exactly is out there. Also, I'm really not sure why I decided this, but I can't get it out of my head that Ryver makes the best tea. So there's that. Sometimes I have trouble like describing characters because I feel like I reuse the same words for characters that in my head, like, they're very different. So maybe I need to expand my character describing vocabulary, because I feel like it's so much easier to just like describe the kind of calm or the kind of peaceful or the kind of strong that a character is by giving them a story example. But like, I also don't want to go into this long-winded explanation of a story that I'm like, it's barely a skeleton at this point. So I apologize if some of my descriptions of characters seem a bit samey. I hope you guys don't think I am only making 5 different types of characters, but maybe I actually am. I have no idea. Most of the design, I had a pretty easy time deciding what I wanted in the end. I took a little inspiration from native and also Nordic looks. Nordic mostly because Tritons, the species that he is, have some more Norse inspiration, but I kind of picture the area and the town to have more Native American inspirations, which obviously, like with the Wendigo, that's a Native American cryptid, I guess you'd call it. So leaning into that more. But also I want to keep it nice and simple, clean, streamlined. The only thing I did have trouble with was deciding whether or not I wanted the cape to have like a fur poof at the neck opening or not. I even did a finished drawing of the poof of him like with the neck fur, but afterwards I was working on this design like on and off for a few days, all of these designs really. But yeah, I ended up finalizing the design without the neck poof. So little retcon there for that piece of art. But I ended up doing that because I think it makes a stronger silhouette and also simplifies the design a lot more. And I think color-wise, it's just stronger. And yeah, that's about it for Ryver. Here he is. Let's move on to the next characters. Okay, I won't harp on as long for these next characters. At least I'll try not to. But this next character is Ryver's wraith, Vinyer. A wraith is basically a strange creature that you can quote-unquote claim by placing something over their head, like a hood or a hat, you know, really anything as long as it stays on their head for a decent amount of time. After that, they're fiercely loyal to you and will follow your commands. I knew going into it that I wanted Vinyer to have the skull of a Wendigo as his hat, because as of now, the idea is that during the fight that Ryver lost his arm in, he used one of the Wendigo's skulls so he could use Vinyer to help him. Basically, he was fighting multiple Wendigos, and after killing one, he kept the skull and used it on Vinyer. Ever since then, they've been hunting partners. And to have an unkillable wraith, that's, you know, a pretty helpful thing to have for fighting, well, most things, really. So first, I wanted to make sure I had a good idea of how the skull was shaped and make sure it wasn't too difficult to replicate. I did mess up on the horns for one of the sketches, I think, though, so just ignore that for me, please. But once I was done, you know, getting a grasp of how the face was, I then draw the base and turned to clothing. I'm going for a more quick and sharp look for the character. So I wanted to lean more into triangles, which at first, with the first 2 and partially 3, I don't really think came through, as I wasn't focused on the shape language. Also, I wanted to keep a similar color palette that Ryver has, especially the lighter blue colors. I made even lighter and put in his eyes, but you know, it's the same genre of blue. And beyond that, I try to use similar materials. And that's part of the bouncing off that I'm kind of talking about. I want to make sure that they feel very consistent, and part of that is I wanted to, for these guys, usually I change colors, but for these guys I felt like it would be better to keep similar colors. So I wanted them to differ a lot more in their silhouettes. As I've said, I was working on these on and off for a few days, so the recording could be a little choppy, and the designs possibly all over the place. In the end, I still felt like, alright, I feel like this isn't, really giving off the vibe. I feel like it's kind of basic. It's not like, whoa, what a cool design. Which, like, not every design has to be that, especially for, honestly, relatively minor characters in the grand narrative. But in the end, I took the third design and basically sharpened and streamlined the outfit to again give off that dangerous and fast look. Main thing was, instead of the poof, like before, his outfit was a bit baggier. Basically, I made it more form-fitting, which you might think that like the baggier, the more like warm it looks. But for a wraith, it doesn't really matter how cold or how hot it is. So I don't feel like it's unrealistic too, so that's a plus. Overall, now I'm pretty much done with Vinyer, and I hope you like him. I think it turned out pretty cool. I might have made the like, I'm not really sure what to call it, the middle piece too sharp, but that's pretty easy to fix if I feel I need to. Anyways, let's move on to the next guy. Friedolf is essentially the guy who took care of Ryver when Ryver was young. And, he was his mentor. He helped him. I am barely in the lore. I've got concepts of a plan. And honestly, I had a really hard time with this design. I only really had two things I knew I wanted in the design. I wanted him to be an elf, and I wanted him to have the same blue eyes that are in Ryver's and Vinyer's design. Unfortunately, all of that proved to be a lot more difficult than I imagined. Now, I ended up doing some sketchbook sketches for all of these characters. You saw the final versions for the other two, but those were actually done after I did the sketchbook session. I really like to use sketchbooks for my concepts a lot. I'm not really sure why, but it feels more freeing with a sketchbook, and like I have better ideas when I'm using it. I also feel like I'm faster, so I usually just do concepts in my sketchbook first, and it also helps me stay away from sticking to one design too much, because with digital art you can kind of just like copy and paste. I'll just reuse this color blocking. But with sketchbooks, you have to remake it every time. Anyway, after I did the sketchbook session, I did the basics of defining the face and making the base. I knew that I wanted black and blue hair, but the right blue was just really hard to find, and the colors for everything was just all over the place. I had no idea which ones to go with, as none of them felt right, to the point where eventually I ended up stepping back from the designs for a bit to think about it. I think my biggest problem with this design is I was thinking too much of the practical and not enough of the actual design, and I ended up making the design too boring. If I look at my first designs, I think, well, those look like random NPCs. Like, I would not think twice about seeing them. The only thing like interesting is he has blue hair, which for the fantasy world that I'm making is pretty basic, honestly. So basically there's nothing really making him stand out. But I went back and tried to fix this, and by restarting the design. Instead of the solely practical hunter-forager outfit befitting of your average nobody NPC, I added a cape for some flair and to give the design a little more of a triangular rhythm. I also, tweaked some other things and really leaned more into the triangle part of it. And after that, I was like, okay, this is looking good. I like this. I think I'm cooking. Then we got to the colors again. So the first iterations were blue and brown dominant, but that made him just too boring. And the colors were like evenly split, if that makes sense. For a lot of the designs, you want to have a dominant color and then kind of like secondary colors. But these colors, they were just kind of there. So after a lot of headache, I ended up ditching all the blue in the clothing and going for a red and warm gray. And I think this really fixed the color problem. I felt like before my eyes weren't being drawn to the face much. I didn't feel my eyes being drawn anywhere, really. It was just a pudding of blue and brown. But now, I think the red complements the blue, and overall, I feel more drawn to the face. And also, bringing that red from, I'm pretty sure it's only in the beads in Ryver and Vinyer's design. Though, I haven't designed Ryver's weapons yet, actually. But I plan to add red in the weapon. Maybe in a future video. Anyways, I feel a lot better about the colors now and the design overall. I just feel more drawn to the face, which, that's good. I feel like the blue kind of pops now. I could possibly tweak the colors in the future, maybe lightening the blue in the hair now. And desaturating the red, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the design, and I hope you enjoyed this little look into my thought process, my very messy thought process. And if you're interested in more of my art, you can check out my Instagram, and if you want to see more of my characters, I got several videos and short animations. Thank you all for watching. Bye!